here that have attended some of our other classes before. Sorry about that. So I'm excited to see you back for our cheese adventure today, our dairy-free cheese. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. I know Michelle in our 2 previous classes has provided us with lots of information, not only about the whole food plant-based diet, but the benefits of it, as well as some really great cooking tips and cooking tools. The good news is that we finally figured out the recordings for class 1 and 2. So those will be distributed today. It is, the first one's a little tricky. You'll find that we jumped right into where the cooking was happening because we didn't quite start recording at the beginning, but you'll still get the meat of the class. For those that are new and haven't kind of heard my testimonial about whole food plant-based eating, I've always eaten a lot of plants, but not vegetarian. And my husband is total meat and potatoes guy. And I tried to nudge him more toward a plant-based diet, and he was very resistant. And then I don't know why, but in March, he decided he was going to go whole food plant-based. And I thought, okay, he's going to make this like 2 days. I give him a week maximum. I would have been willing to bet all kinds of money on this. And he stuck with it. 4 months later, he's still doing it. He's lost 45 pounds and he feels amazing. He has so much energy. And I think the biggest thing for him, which is why he's sticking with it, is because he's had a lot of trauma to his body and has had a lot of joint pain and muscle pain. And I've never seen him spring off the couch or the floor as quickly as he is now, and he just has no pain. So it's been a wonderful experience for him, and I love that we can cook more with plants at home. So I'm super excited about that. That's my own personal story. And so with that, I don't want to take up too much more of Michelle and Bruce's time, but they are going to lead you through a wonderful recipe and talk more about the benefits of whole food plant-based.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Today, after I knock my glasses off, we're going to make 2 non-dairy vegan cheeses. So the first one we're going to make is the smoky horseradish cheddar spread. And
can you change that screen to show up?
It's supposed to be on speaker. Why isn't, I don't know why it's not switching when we're speaking.
I think we can hear you. It's fine.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Speaker view.
And if there's anyone here that is not seeing Michelle and Bruce in a very small box, you can go up to the right and go to speaker view, or if you see gallery view, you can check that for speaker view and you'll see them bigger.
Also, if you all mute yourselves except for Michelle, any feedback noise won't pop you back to the speaker screen.
Correct. Why we're not large, I don't know. Because we're on speaker view now.
You're fine, Michelle. We can see you.
Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, and if there's anyone that is not a fan of horseradish, you can make this cheese spread without the horseradish. But if you are a fan of horseradish and you've never made your own horseradish, you're going to be impressed because this will taste better than any horseradish you buy in the grocery store. So Bruce, we have a piece of horseradish root that Bruce has peeled.
It comes like this.
In the produce department. And you can get it at Publix, Sprouts, Whole Foods, most of the grocery stores.
You have to peel off the outer coating, which is usually black. I've already peeled this off because it's kind of messy, okay? So I peeled it off, I cut it in half, cut it in half again. You gotta talk to it, it's kind of kind of uncooperative.
It's a very hard root vegetable. So we're looking for 1 cup of cut up horseradish root. And I've never made this without a Vitamix, so I'm not sure how it would work in either a food processor. It would probably work just fine. It might just take a little bit longer. I've only ever made it in my Vitamix, so that's how we're going to make it today. And I think I did put it in the recipe. The very first time I ever made this, you put the horseradish root in here and then you start grinding it up, and then you take the lid off to scrape down the sides of the container. And the first time I did that, I took the lid off and I put my face over the container. Do not want to do that because it will clean out your sinuses big time in a hurry. So just do not put your face, whether you're using a food processor or the Vitamix, do not put your face over the container. You'll be sorry. Okay, you got a cup there? Here's a cup. I'm actually going to turn my Vitamix on, and then I'm going to drop them in the lid. I took the little plug out so that I could drop them in the lid.
Noise alert.
It won't be that bad.
Yeah, well.
So if you have a Vitamix, I'm turning this on to number 5. And then I'm going to drop my pieces in there. Then I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to actually scrape down the sides so that I get it all. So I'm just scraping down the sides of my container. I'm not putting my face over the container. And it gets worse once you add the vinegar. Okay, so that's that. And then next, I'm going to add a ½ cup of just regular white vinegar. And I've got 1 tablespoon of sugar and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So again, I'm going to turn my Vitamix on. And I think I put it up to 8. And then I add the rest of my ingredients. So I need a ½ cup. No, I want this one. I want this one so it doesn't spill out.
Michelle, is that food grade vinegar or just any vinegar off the shelf?
It's food grade vinegar.
Organic.
It's actually Sprouts organic white vinegar.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to turn it up to 8. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to add my vinegar, my salt, and my sugar. Okay, so my horseradish is done. You see how long it took to make that? Not long. And again, I'm not putting my face over my container. Ooh, it's strong. Ooh, I can smell it from here. Okay, so to make the rest of our cheese, my eyes are watering already. Okay, to make the rest of my cheese for the almond spread, I've got 2 cups of raw organic almonds, unsalted, and I did soak them for maybe 15 minutes in some hot water. I'm not opposed to the skins, but if you are opposed to the skins, you can simply just, after you soak them, just run your finger over them and the skin will come right off. But I'm not opposed to the skin, so we're actually going to use the skin in our cheese. So I'm putting almonds in my food processor. And then I've got pimentos in this cheese.
Can't get them open.
Got it? So I'm looking for about 3/4 of a cup of pimentos with the lid. So one of these is about a ½ cup. So I'm going to take a little bit of the second jar.
Maybe.
So we can get it open.
Maybe. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's 3/4 of a cup of pimentos. And then I've got a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. Again, I buy this in the bulk. I just put it in this container when I bring it home. So a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast.
So what is the nutritional yeast for, besides giving it that flavor?
And it's a great source of vitamin B12. It's not yeast like you would use to make bread.
I don't know why they call it yeast.
Well, it's an inactive dry yeast, so it's different than the yeast you would use for bread. A little bit of sea salt. And again, I'm not heavy on the salt, so maybe a 1/2 teaspoon. And then liquid smoke, we talked about that last week. Liquid smoke gives it that great smoky flavor. So I'm going to do 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke. And this usually comes in a smaller bottle, but I use it a lot. And then 2 tablespoons of our horseradish. And again, if you're not a fan of horseradish, at this point you would just blend this up and forget about the horseradish. But we love horseradish, so we're definitely going to use it. So. And if you really like horseradish, then you could use more than 2 tablespoons, but I usually start with 2 tablespoons. So we're just going to put our lid on and we're going to blend it up. And I am going to take the lid off and scrape the sides down because I do want it to mix good. I mean, you could leave it chunky. I prefer it a little smoother. And if you do soak your almonds first, it will make the nuts easier to incorporate them and pulse them down. And this is great with crackers or bread or even on a baked potato with vegetables. Blend it a little more. I actually want for it to break down a little more, so I'm going to add a little bit more of my pimento juice. You can also use water, but the pimento juice will keep the flavor. Okay, get me a spoon and I'll taste this and see if I need to adjust anything. Maybe my liquid smoke or my horseradish. That's not a big spoon. Okay, so let's see what we got here. I'm actually going to add a little more horseradish. And sometimes the horseradish roots that you buy, some of them are really hot and some of them are not. I guess it depends on the age of it. So I'm happy with the consistency. Let me taste it again. You want to taste it? He'll want way more horseradish than I do.
Oh, tastes
All
good.
right.
Tastes really good.
Okay, so let me show you my favorite crackers. These are Mary's Gone crackers. They're all organic. They're all gluten-free. You can buy these at Publix, Sprouts, Whole Foods. They have like, I don't know, 8 or 9 different varieties for flavors. This is super seed, seaweed, and black sesame. There's also, these are Bruce's favorite, which are Wassa flatbread crackers. These are 2 of 3 products that I have found that are oil-free. The third one, and I don't have a box to show you, is Whole Foods 365 crackers. They are just like Triscuits, but they have no oil in them. So these are our go-to crackers. Yes. So let's put this in a bowl and get rid of our food processor. And then we'll make our second cheese.
Michelle, would it be possible to make that in the blender versus the food processor?
Yes, you could make it in the blender and it would be smoother than it is in the food processor.
And what was the name of the cracker you used? We couldn't really see it. It was kind of far from...
Mary's Gone crackers. Yeah, take it right up there.
Thank you. Oh, perfect. Mary's
Yeah, and there, like I said, there's like 8 or 9 different flavors. And they are available at Publix as well as Sprouts, Whole Foods. And this is the other Wassa flatbread.
That looks
They're
good
not
too.
necessarily gluten-free. The Mary's Gone crackers are gluten-free.
LJ, I make hummus in my Vitamix, and it just does a beautiful job.
Yeah, this would be a little smoother if you did it in the Vitamix, but I kind of like the texture of this. But yes, you could definitely make it in the Vitamix. So here's our cheese spread.
So here's where I seriously miss the in-person because I'm dying to taste that.
I know. Believe me, we're missing that too because we're so used to letting everybody sample what we make.
And everybody goes,
This is good too. I mean, you know, I'm glad we're having this.
But yes, you're missing the best part, which is actually tasting what we're making. So we are going to switch now to our cheddar cheese. I need to clean out my Vitamix, so I need a container for my. And this little spatula that you guys see me use is a lot thinner than a normal spatula, and I love it because I can get down into my Vitamix to get all of the stuff out of my container.
I have the same ones. They're awesome.
The only place I've found this is at Williams-Sonoma.
I found them on Amazon.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep.
Ooh,
I bought a pack of 3.
My eyes are watering.
Clear out those sinuses.
Oh.
You'll be breathing good tonight.
Okay, so. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, here. I mean, my eyes are seriously watering big time. Woo. Okay, while he's cleaning my container, let's talk about the next cheese. This is a bean-based cheese, which I love because it's got a lot less fat than the nut cheese that we just made. And these are lupini beans. And this is the Cento brand, so these are available in Publix. The only downside of these is you have to peel them. Some people will eat them with the skin on, but the skin is very tough. And I haven't done the research or found the store, but I believe there are some Oriental markets that sell these lupini beans already skinned, but Bruce's job is to take the skins off of the beans. If he wants cheese, then he knows he has to take the skins off of the beans.
And Bruce doesn't mind taking the skin off the beans because it's so good.
Because he gets the cheese.
Bruce,
So,
you're a good man.
Thank you.
I am going to take 140 grams. And the reason that this recipe has the gram listing is the first time I ever had this cheese was one of my friend's mother lives in Paris, but she comes over here and spends the winter with her daughter. And she was part of our potluck group. And the first time I met her, she brought this cheddar cheese. And I was so thrilled with the cheese. I invited her and her daughter and another friend from our group over to my house so she could teach me how to make the cheese. Well, when she showed up at my house with all the ingredients, the cookbook was in French. So I had to have her translate it into English. And this is my go-to cheese for any kind of cheddar cheese. So that's why the grams are listed, because it's actually a recipe from a French cheese making cookbook that she had. So I need my spoon with a slot in it. So I've got my little food scale here, and I'm going to measure out, I'm going to measure out 140 grams of my lupini beans. Okay. I don't want the liquid, I just want the beans. And they're a really odd shaped bean. I'll have Bruce come up to the camera and show you what they look like. They're flat, they kind of look like lima beans.
Flat lima beans.
Yeah, they taste totally different. Okay, so there's 140 grams of my beans. So show them what the beans look like.
What country do they come from?
The flat bean, I'm not sure where they come from. They grow them here in the States.
Oh.
And you can buy these dry and cook them, and they are the only bean I will not make from dry, because my girlfriend did it. She bought some dried ones, and it was like soak them for 5 or 6 days, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Can I just jump in?
From dry, but I won't do these from dry.
I just want to jump in for a moment. If you have questions, if you don't mind putting them in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat and can kind of pause when Michelle's got a good little stopping point and ask them. That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, and then my next ingredient is some roasted red peppers. And just like we talked about last week in reading labels, you want to make sure that the red peppers are not in oil. These are packed in water. So I'm looking for 60 grams of roasted red peppers. Oh, I need another jar open. While he's doing that, I need to soak my agar flakes in my non-dairy milk. So agar is a sea vegetable, and it would be the equivalent of a gelatin. So here is the bag. This I find at Whole Foods. I believe they also have it at Rollin' Oaks. I do not believe they have it at Publix. So the trick with the agar, this is actually what will hold your cheese together, just like a gelatin. So the trick is it has to soak in your liquid for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to put it in here and blend everything up, and then it actually has to cook for about 8 minutes to activate the gelatin. So I need 5 teaspoons of my agar flakes. No, this has to sit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there's my agar flakes. So again, this is a sea vegetable. Takes the place of a gelatin, which if nobody knows that, the reason we don't use like Knox gelatin is because that comes from a horse's hooves. So
Michelle, we have a question. David would like to know if it could be sliced and baked. He makes his own cheese, and it's based from this recipe.
Can it be sliced and baked?
Yes.
Yes, and we actually, because this has to sit in the refrigerator after we put it in the mold for an hour, you take it out of the mold and then you sit it for another couple hours. I actually made one last night so that I can show you what it looks like when it's done, and I'll show you how you can cut it. So yes, you can slice it, you can bake with it, you can cook with it.
Okay, I think he was wondering if you bake it and it gets a little crispy, it kind of turns into a cheese cracker type snack, which sounds amazing.
Yes, and you could also do that if you have an air fryer. You could put it in your air fryer, slice it and put it in your air fryer. But yes, you could do the same thing in an oven at a low temperature. So yes, you could do that. You could make your own cheese crackers. Okay, so I've got my 40 grams, 60 grams of roasted red pepper. So I'm done with this. And then I've got 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. And this you could make in a food processor as well, but I just find that it's just easier to do it in the Vitamix. It's a little more powerful, so it's going to be a little smoother. I've got my Dijon mustard. And I need some lemon juice. So I've got a fresh lemon. I tend not to buy the bottles of reconstituted lemon juice because they do have a preservative in them. So I tend to always buy fresh. So again, when you're dealing with the citrus, if you take the citrus and you roll it first, you'll get more juice out of it. So I'm just going to cut it in half. And depending on the size of your lemon, the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon, which should be about half of this lemon. And I'm using it in my citrus squeezer. This one's orange, but it also comes in green and yellow. But I just buy the orange one because then I can use it for limes, lemons, and oranges. And it does not go in this way that you would think. It goes in cut side down so that the juice comes out and the seeds do not. So there's my fresh lemon juice. And then I've got a little bit of salt. Again, light on the salt. And then I've got 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, which is a 1/4 cup. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of cashews. So there is a little bit of nut in here, we'll talk about some cost saving tips in one of our future classes. But when I buy cashews in bulk, I buy pieces because generally I grind them up or I make a sauce with them. So to me, it's not worth paying the extra money to get the whole cashew. And you can see some of these crumbs are really, really small. So I'm doing 2 tablespoons of cashew pieces. And I'm not soaking these. Putting them in there raw. And then I need, could you give me half of that of filtered water? 2 tablespoons of filtered water. And then my agar flakes, which have been soaking in my non-dairy milk. So I'm adding my water. And then I'm going to put my milk in here. Okay. And then I'm going to mix all this up in my Vitamix. And I'm going to stop a couple times to scrape down the sides of my container. I don't need this anymore. And again, I need that pan off of the stove. This has to be cooked for about 8 minutes, and that is to activate the agar-agar so that the cheese will mold and stay together. So I'm just scraping down the sides. It smells wonderful already. I'm going to blend it up again. So I want it nice and creamy. I don't want any chunks of bean or cashew in there. So it's looking pretty smooth. I'm going to do it, blend it one more time, and I'm also going to taste it and see if I need to adjust anything. It's pretty creamy, pretty smooth. So I'm going to taste it. Oh, that's good. It's been a while since I've made this cheese.
Too long.
I'm going to blend it one more time. Okay, now this is going to go in my pan, and you only need just a small saucepan. I'm going to put it on top of the stove. Go ahead and turn my burner on to pretty high. And the thing with this is you cannot put it on the cooktop and then walk away, because you have to get it to boil, and then you turn it down to a simmer, and you've got to stir it constantly because you do not want to burn it to the bottom of the pan. And I always stir it with a wooden spoon. So I'm just going to pour my cheese into this pan. And again, by using this small spatula, I'm able to get the majority of my cheese out.
Michelle, quick question for you on the agar. I have seen that some cheese recipes call for carrageenan instead.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think there's some research now that it's not that great. The carrageenan isn't great. And if you're switching to agar to substitute in a recipe, would it be 1-to-1, or how does that work?
Well, it depends, and I'm not a fan of the carrageenan either, and it's because of the research that's out there. I do tend to use the agar-agar, and as far as would it be 1-to-1, these are agar flakes. You can also get agar powder, so the quantities would be different. You would have to use more of the flakes than the powder. So I'm not sure how the replacement would be, the substitution for agar versus carrageenan. So I'm going to give this to Bruce. His job is to cook this. So he's going to boil it, and then he's going to let it simmer for about 8 minutes. So while he's doing that, I'm going to show you our PowerPoint presentation, and then we can look at our finished cheese. Are there any questions before we go to the PowerPoint?
Not right now. I think we've covered them all so far.
Okay, let me go to my screen and get my PowerPoint set up. So share screen. Where's my PowerPoint? Sorry, I'm looking for my PowerPoint screen.
Michelle, since you're at the computer, I'm not sure if folks are still waiting in the lobby, but I have a couple that emailed saying that they were waiting. If there is anyone, could you let them in? Although they probably stopped trying now.
Yeah, I don't see anyone there right at the moment. Do
Okay.
you see my screen?
No.
Okay, hang on.
We can see the screen now. It looks great.
Michelle, you're muted.
Michelle, we can't hear you.
She says she's trying. I was reading her lips.
Mute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, let me go back to the beginning of my PowerPoint, sorry.
How am I supposed to do that?
8 minutes. Okay, so. Going. No, didn't start from the beginning. Okay, so today we want to talk about non-dairy alternatives.
Michelle, I think when you're switching to the slide version, we can't hear you anymore. I'm not sure why that is, but we can't hear you again. Maybe if you just leave it in the file version, we can just kind of go from there.
Michelle, say something.
I unmuted me, so I'm not sure why you can't.
You're
Okay.
fine. You're fine.
Now we're good.
You just weren't saying anything. That's why we thought you were muted.
Okay, so let's go back and we'll talk about non-dairy alternatives. And the first thing is the milk alternatives. So I love this chart because it's a comparison of the different dairy-free milks that are out there versus the cow's milk in that first column. And what I want you to look at is the total fat, the saturated fat. Look at the cholesterol. It's the only milk listed with cholesterol. And you always hear about how you have to have dairy milk to get your calcium and your vitamin D, but the milk has the least amount of calcium for all these milks on the screen that are being compared.
Oh.
As far as the vitamin D, the milk does have the most vitamin D, but if you look at the measurements for the rest of the non-dairy milks, they're not that far below what the vitamin D level is in the whole milk. So I'm going to choose the non-dairy milk and not do the total fat, the saturated fat, and definitely not the cholesterol. This is just some of the different non-dairy milks that are available. You can buy any of these in any of the grocery stores. The Ripple is a pea protein milk, which is relatively new. And the only thing I'd caution is just read your labels, because some of these are going to have oil in them. Some of them are going to have sugar. This is a great little snapshot of, like, the hazelnut is great in coffee. The coconut milk is awesome in ice creams. The soy milk is what I use typically to make my own non-dairy yogurt, and I make that in my Instant Pot. So this is just some of the different ones. I love this slide. To me, this says it all. Humans are the only species in the world that drinks the milk from another species. Think about that. We're the only ones that do that. You know, if we're breastfed as a baby, that's the milk that we should get. But as soon as we're weaned from that, we go to the dairy milk. Non-dairy cheese alternatives, we're making 2 cheeses today. We made a nut-based cheese with the almond spread. These are some of the brands of cheese that are available. These are all non-dairy. Some of these you'll have to get at Whole Foods, like the Mayokas Creamery, Kite Hill, Follow Your Heart, Field Roast. I think those are available at Publix. Again, watch your labels for oil, added ingredients, sugar sometimes, and yogurt. I used to make my own dairy yogurt, and now I make my own non-dairy yogurt. Again, I make that in my Instant Pot, and I usually use soy milk. But here's some brands of non-dairy yogurt. These are all available in the major grocery stores, Publix. The only one I'm not sure about is the Vega brand. I know that's carried at Whole Foods. And then coffee creamers. Everybody struggles with replacing the creamer in their coffee. So this is just different brands. There's a Trader Joe's down there in the corner. Some of these are shelf sustainable, which means you don't have to refrigerate them until you open them. There's a banana nut coffee creamer up there. I haven't tried that one. And then ice cream alternatives. Everybody loves ice cream, including me.
Oh.
So this is just different brands of ice cream. There's coconut, there's soy. Again, check your labels, because a lot of these are going to have sugar in them. Some of them will have oil in them. And then this is, it's called a Yonana's frozen dessert maker. And we're actually going to use this next week when we make our frozen nice cream with frozen bananas along with our black bean brownies. So we'll talk about more about this machine next week. And then gluten-free. There's a lot of gluten-free products out there now. And basically, if you're a true celiac, then you should stay away from gluten, because gluten is actually just a protein. And when you eat something with gluten and you are a celiac, it damages the lining of your small intestine, and it keeps some of the foods from being used or absorbed by the body. So if you're a true celiac, or you've been diagnosed with a gluten intolerance, or maybe a wheat gluten allergy, or if you have some of the autoimmune diseases, the gluten-free products, though, are not fortified, so they're not like the wheat products that you would get. And here's some readily available gluten-free products. The ones on the left are available at Costco. So you've got seeds and nuts, bread, rice, and then the ones on the right are just basic breads, gluten-free breads that you can buy at the normal grocery stores. The Ezekiel is usually in the freezer section. I've never seen that in the bread aisle. And Dave's Killer Bread is another great one. And then I always like to end with my favorite slide, which is Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine. That's what we need to get back to, is just letting food be the medicine that our bodies need. And I will be sending a copy of this entire presentation to Jane so that everyone has their own copy. So let me unshare my screen.
Michelle, we have a couple questions about an almond milk being high in sodium, a certain brand.
Yes, and that's why I said you should always read your labels. You know, I've got a couple brands that I usually buy. I'll buy the Califia unsweetened vanilla and the Califia unsweetened regular. I'll also buy Silk or Almond Breeze. And some of the others, though, I always check the label, because yes, the sodium can be high in some of them. Okay, you're pretty good.
And there's also a question about yogurt and whether the taste compares to dairy yogurt.
Again, I think it's a taste preference, and if you're used to eating a dairy yogurt that is full of fruit and sugar, then when you transition to the non-dairy, I would recommend that you start with the fruit sweetened non-dairy yogurt, and then try and transition to an unsweetened non-dairy yogurt and add your own fruit. And if you still need, I mean, fruit is so sweet, and if you still need it to be sweeter after you add the fruit, then maybe a little bit of honey or a little bit of maple syrup. But again, if that's the only way that you can transition from the dairy to the non-dairy yogurt, then by all means, get the ones already with the fruit and the sweetener in it, and then just try and transition yourself away from that to using the non-dairy unsweetened and adding your own fruit.
Okay, what about sour cream?
Sour cream is the same, and we actually make our own sour cream. It's cashew based. Again, read your labels. That's my biggest advice, is read the labels of all the products that you're buying. Sorry, my eyes are still watering from the horseradish. So Bruce has finished the cheese. It's cooked. So I've got this, show you my mold. This is like a mini cheesecake spring form pan. And I got these on Amazon. No, I actually bought them at Target, but I know they're available on Amazon. So the bottom just pops out. So I'm going to pour this in my mold. I'm going to pour it in my mold. Oh, first, would you get me some Mrs. Dash Fiesta Lime? And I'll show you what I'm doing when I take the one out of the refrigerator. It's on the left, right there. So I'm just going to take, when I take this out, the bottom is going to be the top of my cheese. So for presentation, I'm going to take a little bit of my Mrs. Dash Fiesta Lime, salt-free, and you could use anything that you wanted or nothing at all. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in the bottom of my mold before I put my cheese in there. Okay. Then I'm going to put my cheese in my mold. I'm going to get it all out of my pan. And again, you've got to cook this and heat up the agar-agar for it to activate. So I've got all my cheese out of my pan, and I'm just going to smooth off what looks like the top, but it's actually going to be the bottom once I take it out. So you can have this. And I'm just going to wipe off the top, make it nice and clean. And then I'm going to go put this in my refrigerator and get out the one I made yesterday. Okay, so with the magic of television, here is the cheese I made last night. So I took it out of the mold after an hour. I flipped it upside down on my pan. So here's my Mrs. Dash seasoning that I put on the top. And my cheese is set. So I need a cheese knife out of that drawer. And I'm going to get a cracker. I'm going to show you how you can slice the cheese. A little white plate. So we'll do a Mary's Fun cracker, and we'll do a wassa bread. This is actually crisp bread. And this is great on a baked potato or with crackers. So I've got my little cheese knife. And I'm going to cut my cheese. So there's my slice of cheese. So I'm going to put this on my crisp bread. And you can spread it if you want, or you can leave it as a slice. And I don't remember who asked the question about putting it in the oven and making a cheese cracker, but I'll be trying that in my air fryer because that sounds wonderful. So here's my cheese.
Don't spread it, just put it on.
So my crisp bread and my crackers with my cheese. So I guess we need to do a little taste test. So I'll eat the Mary's Fun cracker. Bruce can eat the crisp bread.
Do I have to?
No, you can save it for me.
Michelle, do you ever, since we're talking dairy, do you do a do you do a class on making yogurt?
I could. The only challenge with that is in the Instapot, it cooks literally, if you will, for 8 to 12 hours. But yes, we could go through the process of how you make it. But obviously I would have to do the same thing that we did with the cheese. I would make it in advance so that I had a finished product to show you. But yes, we could show you the process of how to make it.
And if you don't have an Instapot, I'm just trying to think for those that don't, is there a way to make it a different way?
Yes, and I used to have just a regular, it's called a yogurt maker, and it's electric. It just plugs into your electrical outlet. It's at a very low temperature. And I used to have one of those, but when I got my Instapot, I just got rid of it because the Instapot also makes yogurt. So yes, there's a way to make it without the Instapot. Absolutely. Do we have any more questions, Jane?
Nope, I don't think so. And if I missed anyone's questions in the chat, I apologize. Definitely unmute yourself and be heard so that we get everybody's questions answered.
What was that, Mrs. Dash, again? What was the flavor on that?
This is Fiesta Lime, and Mrs. Dash has got, I don't know, 10 or 12 different flavors. They're all salt-free. They actually have a chicken-flavored one. They have a steak-flavored one. They have a chipotle. I think I have them all. Yeah. So, yeah. So this one that I used is Fiesta Lime. These are all available in the grocery store. This is onion and herb. This is Italian medley. This is lemon pepper. We have this on our salad almost every night. And this is tomato, basil, garlic. Southwest chipotle.
Wow, those all sound amazing.
Table blend. There's a big yellow one up there. That's the original. This is chicken. Chicken flavored,
so crazy.
but there's no chicken in it, but it's chicken spices. Extra spicy, if chipotle is not enough for you. And then this is the original blend, Mrs. Dash. So Again, these are all salt-free. They're all available at your grocery store. They're not terribly expensive, but they're a great alternative for salt-free seasoning. So next week, I believe I don't remember what day it is. Wednesday.
It's August 5th.
August 5th. We will be making some frozen nice cream with a Untitled machine.
Oh, boy.
And we'll be making a black bean brownie.
Ooh.
So that
If
is
you've
our-
never had a black bean brownie, they're amazing. You wouldn't know there are black beans in it at all. So if you're making a face right now saying no way, I guarantee you will love the black bean brownie.
Incredible.
Absolutely, and the only thing I can say about that is the first time you make it for your friends or family, don't tell them it's black beans, because a lot of people will have that preconceived notion of I'm not eating a black bean in my brownie, because as Jane said, you could take a black bean brownie and a regular brownie, and 9 times out of 10 you would not be able to tell the difference. So I hope you join us next week for that class. It will be another great class. Thank you for joining us today. Again, I will send the PowerPoint so that you each get a copy of that. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. Stay safe and be well, and we'll see you next week, hopefully.
Yeah, I have a
Thank you,
couple more.
Michelle and Bruce.
I have a couple more quick things before we let everybody go. Next week, we were guessing when we sort of made the plan about class times, and we did plan an evening class, and it is 5:30. I did get some emails from some of you saying that it was hard to either stay late at work or make it home in time for the 5:30. So I apologize for that. We are kind of sticking to the schedule we have since that's what's promoted, but thank you all for the feedback so that we can help plan a little bit better for next time. Michelle is going to talk about air fryers, Instapot techniques, Vitamix basics, and she also mentioned Yonanas next week, so that'll be a great class. I have really exciting news. We were able to get 3 more classes approved in our budget. Woohoo! So we will have an additional class in August, on August 10th. Some of you have indicated that a morning class before work would be great. So we're going to try a couple 8 a.m. classes. She's going to make a protein power ball next time. We're in the process of updating the flyer. And then we're going to have to wait a couple months. Well, toward the end of September, we'll have a couple more because Michelle and Bruce are going to go do fun, adventurous things. So we're super excited about that and look for the updated flyers coming soon.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
again.
you. Thank you. Have
Just look. Free.